There's a new Naruto game coming to mobile that you definitely weren't expecting. We're going to cover it here today.
Right now I'm just a kid, but I'll be Hokage myself one day. All right, let's run wild. All right, I'm giving this my best shot. How about this?
That looks crazy on mobile, dude. I've got to admit, it looks crazy.
Don't worry, we won't lose. You can't defeat me so easily.
Yes, let's go, everybody! I'm gonna get stronger and stronger. Let's go! Yeah, I'm stuffed.
Giant sand barrier!
Shadow Strangle Jutsu!
Bang over bang!
High grab 64 palm!
Rasengan! Shadow Jutsu!
I don't feel like I'm gonna lose.
Double lightning quake!
Roam your nightmare, Tsukuyomi.
This is the end! The burning sky! Dynamic entry!
Guy. Dude, the giant boss fights in this game.
You stupid beast!
Why would you do this for anyone but yourself?
Because they saved me from myself, from my loneliness. They were the first to accept me for who I am.
A bond? If that's how it is, then I'll just have to sever that bond. Let's just end it. This battle, and all the battles until now. Naruto!
Was there a little more here? I did do the DFree don't pause, didn't I? Why the hell they got that on a trailer like this?
That's my skill talking.
Too slow.
It's like the exact same clip as earlier.
This. Don't worry.
Okay, this is like, well, it's probably because this isn't the Bandai channel. Anyway, how do you guys feel about that? We're going to talk about this. I think that this is personally really cool. So here's the thing about this. I've seen a lot of mixed comments on this, so post down below how you feel about this. There's some people that are like, oh, I love this. There are also some people that are like, oh, wait, I hate this because we didn't get another new Naruto game on mobile. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that. They didn't decide to produce another Naruto game here. We do have Ninja Voltage just hanging on. If you told me just a few years ago, back when we had Storm, or Blazing, excuse me, all that stuff, that Ninja Voltage, that Borutage would be the last one standing, I would have thought you were crazy. But I really liked Borutage. It just didn't seem like the type of game that would last. But hey, I was wrong. Anyway, that being said, I think this is really cool because to me, when they do this, it really is interesting because it opens the doors for a lot of things. What is one Bandai game that you would love to see that's from an older generation, PS3 and earlier, ported to mobile? Post down below. I think that they're not going to do it because we have Sparking Zero, but some of those Budokai games ported to mobile would kind of cook, bro. They would cook. Those games aren't even on like Steam or anything like that though, so that's kind of weird where this game is. Now, the thing with this coming out is that it's going to be interesting to see. In fact, we should be able to see it here. The requirements for this game, do they typically list that? Like I know Steam does, and obviously this is Android, iOS. You can pre-order the game if you want. I'm just really nervous about some phones trying to play this. If your phone is older than a couple years, your phone's gonna be on fire. It's gonna be smoking in your hand. It just can't work. I just can't see it. So that's what I'm kind of worried about, especially some of those sequences where he's got the multi-shadow clones going on. It's gonna be, or these big boss fights. There's just gonna be so much on the screen needed to render. I just don't know how this will work. Mobile games also typically don't have graphic settings, so I'd imagine it's set to a pretty low overall resolution. It looks like it is, but that could just be the quality of the trailer here. Also, it has to run in 60, right? The original game, I believe, ran at 60 and was very, very beautiful. So I played this game when it came out. I'm 30 even. And I got to play this game when it came out. Storm 2, though, was my favorite game for a really long time. So that's another thing, too. When I say this opens the doors, I'm really looking forward to that. And I also, not just with Bandai specifically, I'm also really looking forward to the way that more games continue to get ported over. Like, for example, Dragon Quest Monsters Joker that came... Not Joker, is it? It's the Dark Prince. That came out last year. I love that game, and I didn't get to finish it on my Switch because I just kind of put my Switch down, didn't pick it back up. But that just came to Steam and mobile. That game is brand new. It came out last year. Now, again, it's a Switch game, so it's not like it's the craziest, most hardcore thing. But I do love this modern thing that they're doing where other games are getting ported from consoles over to the mobile space, right? Because that's pretty cool. I will say a couple of things. I talked about Square Enix. They actually have a really long, like over a decade-long track record of porting their console games. Think PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy games or older Dragon Quest games. These games, I'm not so mad about it on Dragon Quest, but like on the Final Fantasy games, they don't even put controller support. And yeah, you can imagine that would be something you would think would be on these games, but I just talked about how the newest Dragon Quest game came out, and they didn't add controller support to that either. And just for context, here's a look at that game on mobile, on iOS, from another YouTuber. It's not like it's the craziest game overall. It's also, when it comes to combat, a turn-based game, so it's easier to kind of navigate with those controls. I'm just really concerned about the storm with all those buttons. I mean, this looks kind of convoluted, but at the same time, it looks pretty cool. But I know that some people are really going to be looking forward to having that controller support. So to my greater point, I am hoping that this has controller support too. Also, the cool thing about this is, like I talked about, it opens the doors for other games in the future. I assume that they'll probably also do Storm 2 at some point. But the fun thing about this is, and this could have been why some people also would have expected or wanted an announcement for a new Storm game. The thing about this is that it's a little bit late, like a year and a half, 2 years late, but this may be something that's kind of started or was part of or initially part of the 20th anniversary celebration for the anime releasing. So I believe that was 2022. But they also announced this is another thing too that's kind of funny with the Naruto IP. They also announced that anime returning, not Boruto, but like they were going to do that. I think it was only going to be a handful of episodes, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. But a handful of episodes or so of just OG Naruto reanimated / remade from back then. And they never really gave much more information on that. It was supposed to come out last September. Still hasn't come out. So I just wonder if this was also part of that too, which is why they chose base Naruto instead of like one of the Shippuden-based games or something like that, if you're wondering about the Naruto IP in general. And I will say, to the greater point of the Naruto IP, regardless of any of this, and I'll talk more about the Bandai thing in a minute, because there is some good to this, like I talked about. Regardless of any of this, it is interesting how they feel the need to constantly keep on just repeating these games or things like that. It really left a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths with connections and stuff like that, where that's like largely the last game with just a few extra tweaks on it so they can sell it again, right? So that's one of the things that I think really is unfortunate for the Naruto IP, because they're not doing anything with it right now. It's just kind of in limbo. And as somebody that grew up with it in the early 2000s, it was really near and dear to me for a really long time. When I was a kid, these episodes were airing, right? I was from the era where we watched the Shippuden on, I gotta take this out because they're too loud for me. We watched Shippuden on YouTube with fan translations. Like, that was a thing back in, like, what, 2006, 2007? That was a thing. That was the main way we were able to interact with the series after a point. And it's like, oh, Naruto's growing up. You would watch the Naruto movies from when he was a kid or in, the Shippuden era on YouTube as well. Like, so, like, for me, it's near and dear for me. So I'm really, really excited about just seeing anything. But it is unfortunate how there's not really much new going on. In fact, they haven't even resumed the anime. The only thing going right now is the manga, right? So it's just kind of weird overall with this. But back to the Bandai point. This is actually a good turning point for Bandai because they don't really do this. I will admit that I'm not sure if any of these like Tamagotchi or Pac-Man type games are ports of console games or anything like that. And I believe all of these are exclusive to the Apple Arcade, which is why you probably wouldn't be able to play these. But regardless, I don't think Tamagotchi even has any console games, does it? Anyway, this is a look at their catalog, right? So Very Little Nightmares, Dragon Ball Legends, One Piece Treasure Cruise. The rest of them aren't showing here, I guess. But they've got a few more like Isekai Memories. I figure this would be better. Obviously, Dokkan, right? It goes without saying. They have Dokkan, the two versions of it. They've got Ninja Voltage, which we talked about earlier. There's Isekai Memories. They've got SAO Integral Factor still going. They've got My Hero Ultra Impact still going. We have other non-games down here for the Dragon Ball IP. Ace Angler, I've never even seen that on my market at all. They got the Mobile Suit Gundam game that came out, and it's just I don't know. I'm a Gundam fan, but I have no faith in any Gundam game coming out, to be honest. Unless it's a literal console game, they're gonna take it off the market. So there's not a lot here in general. I mean, there's a good catalog, but there's not any games like Storm. Storm is the first of its kind. Whereas, like I said, if you look at a publisher like Square, they've done at least a dozen of them by now where they're porting older games over. And so this is a good sign. And I think Hydros was telling me that there's also a few other games that have been ported recently, like Assassin's Creed or Resident Evil. I'm not too big of a fan of those IPs, so I couldn't tell you. But for Bandai, this is a big sign because they do have other old games that they published that this treatment could get handed for. And I think that this is pretty cool because it's going to bring these games to the modern fans. And I know you could play these games on emulators and stuff like that. In fact, is there an emulator that can play this right now? I don't know what consoles this all launched on. I just had a PS3, and I don't think, and by the way, by emulator, I mean mobile emulator. Obviously, there's a PC and whatever else emulator for the computer. But mobile, I don't know if there's a PS3 mobile emulator, is there? That sounds kind of crazy to me. By the way, on a side note, I'm not a developer, but an interesting thing about PS3 games coming over is that it's always been something I've heard online is that PS3 games, to reverse engineer them to be able to push them out like this actually takes a lot of work. So, because in something with the way that the infrastructure for the PS3 was, it makes it a pain for them to remaster these games or port them separately, whatever the case is, and just make tweaks to these games. So that's kind of a fun thing too. You know what game I'm really looking forward to? Yeah, Sparking Zero is coming out. You definitely need to watch my newest Sparking Zero video, which you can find on the screen right there. Got to do this backwards. I'm not really pointing that direction. I'm actually pointing the opposite way. But anyway, you know what game I myself am looking forward to? I'm going to say it right now, and everyone's going to hate me for it. Ultimate Tenkaichi.